they haven't had the chance to do that. They just got called up this year. So I think the likelihood of them contending in 2020 will all depend on how they approach this offseason and whether they're willing to spend some money because as of right now, the 2020 rotation, with the exception of Nate Pearson coming up and a couple guys like Zoid, K, or Thornton taking big leaps, I think is very underwhelming. So they'll need to go out and address that in the offseason if they plan to make the playoffs in 2020.
For sure. Next question, Boba Fan 11. In your opinion, who is better, Vladdy or Bo?
I think it all depends on just exactly what you're looking at in terms of these guys. In terms of prospect rankings, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. has always been higher. He's been higher than pretty much everybody in this current class of prospects. I think the ability for him to hit the ball with as much power as he has, and just be an overall outstanding hitter at the plate, Vladimir Guerrero Jr. is that guy. He's the best hitting prospect we've seen really in a while. It might be the best hitting prospect we've seen ever. So I think it's hard to really not pick Vlad for this one just because of how well he's been touted by some really smart baseball minds in terms of evaluating prospects. But as a full package player, I think Bo Bichette probably has more tools because he's got a little more speed. The defense is there a little more. It's really going to be tough, but this is a great problem to have, and I think it's something that we're going to debate for years and years to come.
Yeah, and certainly Bo is going to have his slumps in the major leagues. All the rookies have their slumps, and we're going to certainly watch out for next season with the sophomore slump with all these rookies. So we're pitchers going to adjust to them. Paul DeYoung of the Cardinals was a good example of that. He had a very first good rookie season, but then after that fell off. But certainly he wasn't ranked as highly as Bo and Vladdy were. But you certainly can't rank these two players head to head. They're who they are. They're great for who they are. So right now it might seem that Bo is a better player with that instant production that he gets, that is instant spark he provides at the top of the order. But Vladdy was an 80 hit tool player, so obviously potential's there. So we'll have to wait and see. You can ask us in like 5 years. Next question comes from Wick.Wire. He says, where is Devin Travis nowadays? So Devin Travis has been injured for most of the year. We haven't seen him much last year. Just a poor guy. Really wish Devin Travis the best, but his days as the J are far from over. I mean, they are over. My apologies. He is a possible non-tender candidate this winter for sure. The Jays really don't have a spot for him. They have the young guy movement. They have Brandon Drury as a backup infielder. We have Urania. Devin Travis has just fallen off all the depth charts. He's fallen back in depth. Certainly the AAA guys, they're proven healthy. Devin can't get any healthy, but that trade was certainly very good for the Blue Jays. Anthony goes for Devin Travis. So it's sad to see how Devin Travis ended his tenure with the Jays, but I believe it is over for him.
Yep, I have to agree. If someone asked me over/under on the games played by Devin Travis for the rest of his career as a Blue Jay, and they set the number at 0.5, I would have to take the under, and that's unfortunate. I'd be really surprised if we ever see Devin Travis play another game as a Blue Jay. Just obviously a big disaster with his injuries, and it's just really unfortunate to see a guy who clearly had a lot of talent and a guy who I believe could have been an everyday second baseman for the Blue Jays for years and years to come. But you know what? Never know. Maybe this offseason he's able to put it together and stay healthy and come into camp with a real shot and looking healthy. I think that conversation changes, but right now I'm not overly optimistic about that.
Yeah, so Devin Travis, certainly we wish him the best of luck, but he's certainly falling down the drain kind of like Dalton Pompey did. So M. Soley 123 asks, is Sean Reed-Foley a bust?
Well, I mean, define bust, because a lot of people have different expectations on what a bust is. A lot of guys who are drafted really early in their careers and don't project to have the careers that people expected them to are often labeled as bust. But to me, I feel that very rarely is a player ever a bust, and that might sound a little too nice. But for example, like Anthony Bennett in basketball, he's no question that he's a bust, but you look at other first-round picks like Andrew Wiggins the next year, and I'm using these guys because they're Canadians and they're probably a little more well-known in terms of a Canadian audience. So Andrew Wiggins, he hasn't quite lived up to the expectations that people might have set for him as the first overall pick, but he's still an everyday NBA player, and he's a guy who plays and has a job and has a contract. So I wouldn't consider him a bust. I just consider him a disappointment. And I think so far, first of all, it's way too early to label anyone a bust after, 67 innings that Sean Reed Foley has thrown in the big leagues. That's obviously a really small sample size, but disappointment, I would say so. He's a guy who always seemed to be among the top pitching prospects for the Blue Jays the last half decade or so, and now that we're seeing him pitch in the big leagues, he's certainly got issues that need to be ironed out, and got to be real, he hasn't been overall all too impressive in the short time that he's been a Blue Jay the last couple seasons.
He's only 23, so certainly potential with him, but he just needs to throw strikes, quality strikes at that. But his command is very, very poor. He certainly walks a lot of guys, and he has composure on the mound. So they sent him down to AAA just 2 days ago, just to refine on his pitches, work on his craft. So hopefully he takes this opportunity to really work, dial in, throw strikes. Because at the major league level, if you're not going to throw strikes, you're not going to go far. So for him, I hope he figures it out and he can contribute next season. He certainly has some nasty stuff, so it's going to be seen nice. So the last question, that bearded guy 14, he says, I haven't been able to watch many games. How has Derek Fisher been looking? And Derek Fisher can certainly rake against lefties. We saw the home run against Kershaw. I believe it was Tuesday night. We saw another home run, I believe, just a week ago against lefty. He has good plate discipline. He certainly hits line drives. He strikes out quite a bit, but he can certainly lay off the curves. He's not as prone to strike out like a Kendrys Morales on that 12-6 curve that he's gonna strike out on. It's kind of unpredictable with him when he's gonna strike out, but he does strike out. But he has good plate discipline. He can certainly watch the ball, and he's got effortless power. You just see him. That swing against Kershaw, I didn't think it was going to go out, but it did. And he hits the ball off the bat very hard. So if he can turn it around against righties, he's going to be a very special player.
Yeah, Derek Fisher. It's really hard to assess because he's just not had a lot of plate appearances as a Blue Jay. But yeah, you mentioned the power. That's certainly been a very impressive feature that you've seen by him. 4 home runs and 41 at bats as a Blue Jay. But overall, numbers-wise, just from a generic number point of view, not all that great. He's hitting just 171 since coming over from the Blue Jays. His defense, I haven't really watched a whole lot of games because I was on vacation, but the last week or so that I've watched, he did make that error on a Saturday against Seattle where the ball bounced over his head and lost it in the lights a little bit there. Also that play where he got hit in the face on that pop fly, so certainly a couple blunders, noticeable blunders out there in the field, but I think overall he's sort of been a guy that you've expected him to be, that, I guess, platoon outfielder that hits from the left side, who hits a little bit better against lefties than he has against righties, actually a lot better, as you mentioned, and that power is certainly worth noting, so I'd say it really hasn't been all that eye-popping for the better or the worse for Derek Fisher so far in the short time that he's been a Blue Jay this season.
But Aaron Sanchez has been any good for the Astros the last few starts. He's now on the IL, I believe. His velocity was down to 88 miles per hour. Wow. His last start.
And Marcus Stroman exited the Mets game early yesterday against Cleveland with a apparent blister issue. So that's certainly worth noting for the Blue Jays because a lot of people, after Sanchez's first start with the Astros against, I believe it was Seattle, we combined for that no-hitter, a lot of people were up in the mentions talking about how the Blue Jays management was terrible and how, look at these guys, are playing so good and the Blue Jays, they can. And now it's worth putting it out there that both guys, one is already on the IL and others certainly appears that could be a possibility. Just Just mentioning it there.
Yeah, so we can't really jump the gun. Cal Stevenson, if he was a deal breaker, but Ross Atkins and Marshall Power certainly know what they're doing, so we guys just gotta trust them, leave their trust, and just it's a process, so we gotta trust it, and hopefully Derek Fisher pans out to what they believe he can pan out to. They certainly scouted him. It's not like they just picked him up without doing any due diligence in his services, but Aaron Sanchez certainly, the Jays knew a downhill trend was going to come with him. He certainly has an injured-riddled past. His velocity was down significantly. I just remember a few years ago, he was throwing 97 effortlessly. Now you see him down at 88, so it's certainly concerning.
Haven't seen that this year.
Yeah, certainly concerning to see Aaron Sanchez, but it is what it is. I heard he was a non-tender candidate for the Blue Jays, so I don't know. We just
Also, before we leave off, I saw an interesting thing on Twitter that the worst two starters in the American. Can you guess who the worst two starters in the American League are in terms of ERA?
Ubaldo Jimenez.
No, this season.
Aaron Sanchez.
And who's the other one?
Are they on the Blue Jays?
No, not anymore.
The worst ERA in what did he say?
It's like worst qualified ERA among AL pitchers. The two worst guys. Aaron Sanchez is the one of them. Who's the other guy? Like, who do you think it is?
Former Blue Jays?
He is a former Blue Jay, yes.
Did he play for him this season?
No.
When was the most recent season?
I think I might give it away, but last year.
Marco Estrada?
No, J-Happ. J-Happ and Aaron Sanchez are the two worst qualified ERA pitchers in baseball. The two guys that were finished 6th and 7th respectively in the AL Cy Young just 3 years ago now have the two worst ERAs in the AL. That kind of blew my mind a little bit.
That's kind of sad. And to leave it off on a very kind of sad topic, Marco Estrada has informally announced his retirement with his injured. So it's very sad to see. I will never forget that I believe it was ALCS's performance against the Royals and against the Rangers in the ALDS. He certainly was a competitor, and Marco Estrada, playoff Estrada, was certainly a very good pitcher for the Blue Jays. So it's certainly sad to see that he retired this early. He was only 34, I believe.
Tip of the cap, but unfortunately he hasn't been able to stay healthy this year and just hasn't really been all that effective since 2016.
But it was certainly a good trade, Adam Lind, who's out of the league, I think.
Yeah, no doubt. Marco Estrada, he's been the best postseason starter in Blue Jays history, and unfortunately that's not saying all that much because there's been a huge block of time where the Blue Jays didn't make a postseason. That spanned 22 years, 21 years I should say, because the lockout year. But Marco Estrada, he came in as a guy who was supposed to just be a long man out of the pen when he was acquired, and
I remember.
Turned out to pitch multiple games, big games for the Blue Jays, where he pitched absolute gems, and not just decent outings. He had gems in the ALCS, the ALDS. He was a big part of why the Blue Jays were able to have the success they did those two pennant races.
Speaking about Adam Lind, why do you think he's out of the league? His most recent season, 2017, was very good.
To me, I just think that Adam Lind is probably just an older guy now. He's a left-handed bat who, I guess, just one side from the plate, plays first base, which is not really a position of need, not really a guy that's really all that useful now, and he has gotten a little older. I just feel that he's just, it might have been a personal decision as well, but I think he was on a minor league deal with the Yankees last year. Maybe he's not a guy that a lot of people had use for. We see a lot of these in-betweeners, guys who have some power and guys who just don't play every day. The market for them has really dried out. You see Yonder Alonso, another guy on that list. Chris Carter, another guy on that list. The necessity for these guys and the market for these guys has really gone down in baseball over the last few years or so. I just think Adam Lind was caught right in the middle of that.
Yeah, we see players like Lucas Duda, Logan Morrison out of the league.
There you go.
So that'll wrap up our podcast, episode 12 of Jays in Weekly, brought to you by Jays Banter. Thanks for having me on, Rob, on the show.
Yeah, no problem, man.
So we'll look to have it do another run at this next week. our last one before school starts, but we will be here during the school season, the fall season. So it'll be very interesting topics to cover, podcasts,